there's one last famous phrase, which is hire slow, fire fast. When you're going to fire somebody and you say, hey, look, I want to meet you and 10 o'clock or whatever, when that person's walking to your office or walking to your desk or whatever, or they know you're coming to meet with them, they know they're getting fired. Deep inside somewhere, they know they're getting fired. So know that. Number one, they know they're getting fired. Number two, in the first sentence or two, you tell them, look, it's over. Don't sit there and have a conversation with them about, how the family is, how was your weekend, because all you're doing is torturing them psychologically.
One of the main reasons I wanted to talk to this young man today is because he's just one of my favorite people. And I wanted somewhere in the world, to capture how much I care about and dearly respect Michael Hexner. I had the great honor of meeting Michael through a mutual friend we have named Carl Volt, who is very active in the Williams College alumni community. Carl also served as the intern president for Williams for a year. He introduced me to Mike because at the time I was looking to meet more people that had made, really great gains in the private sector. But since meeting Mike, our relationship has become so much more. And so, we're going to talk about a range of things. We're going to talk about his story. We're going to talk about, America. We're going to talk about business and family and whatever else we can within our hour together. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you, Stevon.
This is my first, discussion, recording somebody driving. Where are you headed right now? What's on the agenda for today?
I'm meeting another friend up in, I'm in the Lake Tahoe area, and we've been working on a project regarding decarbonization. So he's up in the North Lake, I'm in the South Lake, so I'm going to go up and see him, and then maybe meet another guy who's gotten involved from McKinsey. So,
and just so for some context, I didn't mention a lot about your career, but can you talk a little bit just about the tire company and sort of where that started, where that went? And I want to get into your backstory a little bit too.
The tire company started, I'm not sure where to start with it, where it started, but let me say, I took a year off from Williams and did a number of different jobs. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up. I had absolutely no idea. It seemed like almost everybody around me had a great idea. They were going to law school, or they were going to business school, or they were, going to medical school, or, they had some sort of passion or purpose, and I didn't. And so I took this year off, bought a motorcycle against my family's wishes, and I was living in Massachusetts and drove down to Washington, D.C., where I went to part of my high school years, and just met some guys, and I got a job. I just decided I would try to do anything, any kind of job. So, I got a job as a assistant janitor, maintenance engineer at a slum, project outside of DC. I have been tested in the lowest 3 percentile in mechanical reasoning, so I wasn't very good at that job. Couldn't fix the toilets or anything like that. Took a lot of training. That worked for a while. Did construction work. Thought I might try to be an insurance agent, and went through some of the training process and decided I didn't want to sell insurance. In a room, I was sitting there with a bunch of guys, and she said, anybody want a job at the White House? And I was like, nobody else was interested in the room. I raised my hand. I said, sure, I'd be interested. I love politics. I was studying science and philosophy and economics at Williams, and always had been just fascinated with the political world. And so the idea of working out sounded great. I went for an interview the next day, and I got hired for a job as a administrative assistant, which essentially meant, I did a lot of jobs like, I'd get people and distribute it in a part of the White House called the Special Action Office for Drug Abuse Prevention. That was the area in the White House that sort of coordinated all the different things that were going on in the entire drug world, from research that was going on at universities like Yale to the DIA and the CIA and the DEA, to work that was going on at NIH, which at the time was called Health and Human Services. I worked at the White House, and while I was working there, I started dating a woman whose younger brother was working in a tire shop, and he was making twice as much money as me. And I thought, well, that's an interesting comment. Here I'm got this important job at the White House. They sent me to GW to get do some accounting classes, and I'm doing a lot at that when I'm driving the head, sitting in on hearings in Congress. And so I had a fascinating job, but I wasn't making it. He's making twice as much. So he said, look, next summer when if you're going back to Williams, when you come back, I'll get you a job here at the shop, because I didn't have any money. My family didn't have money. And so I needed to make more money. And so, get a job at this tire shop the next summer. And while working there, one day people would ask me, what are you going to do when you leave Williams? And I used to say, I'm going to just put a toll booth on Interstate 95. And I'm not a greedy person, so I'm just going to collect a quarter from just one lane. And I'm looking at this, and what we would do is, our job was to put tires on cars, and every tire we take off the old one and put a new one on. But we would, after we did flip, we would put it on this machine called a spin balancer, and it's about a minute to balance a tire. And the shop charged $3.99 to have the tires balanced. And I looked at it one day, and this light switch went off in my head, and it was like, that's better than toll booth, because at 25 cents a car, I can't get that many cars through in a minute to make $3.99. So forget the toll booth. I'm going to get one of those machines when I graduate. It's not just going to charge $3.99. But what became very key was, it's not what I needed the flow of tires. And I overheard these guys talking about this company that was selling tires like at a Costco, and just sending their customers down the street because they didn't want to do the serve. So it was a big warehouses they had all around Washington, D.C. And customers would sit around for 5 hours waiting at a gas station to pay $2 to put the tires on and $5 to have them balanced. And so I got a hold of the owners, and that was a task. And I proposed to put all their customers' tires on for free and charge $4 to have them, balanced. And they said, okay, well, if you want, try it in one shop. So, I had that idea. I went back to Williams, and a bunch of people at Williams had gotten me into this senior level art class, and I hadn't done any of the prerequisites. And so when I got into the provost they went to the provost of the college, and the college, okay, well,
hold on, Mike.
Yeah.
Let me interject.
Sorry.
It's okay. I remember the story about the toll booth over one of our lunches. And then that's like the first time when I really thought I really like this guy, because it's probably because I wanted to do the same thing, somebody's doing something that I thought if I could just build a bridge and charge a toll, the bridge is built, I can just collect the money, the way that you're talking about this journey, it sounds like you kind of fell into it. It's kind of like this serendipitous, ideas are flowing, you're starting to get creative. You had this conventional thing, and this other thing sounded like there was some opportunity to build around some of the gaps that you saw. What White House were you working in?
I was working in the White House in Washington, D.C.
Which administration?
It was the Nixon administration. And as
a
side note,
this was the late 60s, early 70s.
It was the last 9 months of the Nixon administration, in the fall of 1974, or I'm sorry, 1973. And then he left. Nixon left in August of 70.
You were in college, right? But you're doing this White House thing, and then you meet this other guy that's in the tire business. one of the reasons why I want you to talk about the tire company generally is because, you know, it's important that people know like the success of the person, because I know this tire company like grew to, you know, employ several people. You had business operations all over the world, and I want to get into some of that. How did you engage with Williams? What type of student were you?
I didn't get good grades.
Yeah,
I
I didn't
studied.
either.
I really loved. Like I would read. I would read like Hegel's Prolegomena to the Future of Metaphysics 12 times, knowing that most of the students had read it maybe once or twice. But then instead of writing a paper that would be exactly a regurgitation of the professor, I would be looking at gaps in what I thought Hegel's thinking was. And I would say, look, Hegel missed the point here or something. And the professors just did not want that input. They were like, look, we're not interested in your opinion of Hegel or your thoughts on Hegel. We want to know that you know what Hegel said.
Mm-hmm.
And I was not interested in repeating and regurgitating. I thought that was for high school, maybe, but it surely wasn't for college.
Did you do more school after Williams?
Yeah, I ended up getting a master's degree.
Was that right after or later?
No, much later.
Yeah, I remember it was like mediation, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Dispute resolution. Yeah.
Okay. You see this opportunity in the tire space to maybe decrease the amount of time. You know, you're trying to break into the business. You're offering to do something for free. There's like some important, like, you know, entrepreneurial leadership lessons in that. But let's pick back up where you were there. So you are trying to break into the tire business.
Okay, well, just to finish up, I really did this whole thing because I like to create stuff. And so I'm in the art class, and I knew the teacher didn't want me there, and I knew she thought I was some macho, masculine guy. And so I did everything I could to piss her off. So she wanted us to do an art project. I said, I'm going to do an art project about putting a tire top together. And she was not happy with it. But I did, you know, I tried to do really creative stuff. And you know, so in 1974, videotape was very new, and just video at all, other than, you know, I mean, the only video around was movies, you know, and that, you know, anyway. So I did a videotape with, you know, music in the background of Heart, which was a big female band at the time, one of the first great female rock and roll bands. And, you know, just showing all kinds of cool angles, hitting all of, you know, curves and stuff like that in a tire shop. And he said, look, it's not about the production of a painting like a Mona Lisa, it's the process of putting it together. And that struck me. That's what I decided to do. Was it wasn't about making money. It was that I had this idea that this thing would work, you know, but it was more the whole process of putting it together. So I incorporated, you know, I did a poem, you know, about it. I did all kinds of stuff around it to create it. I got people involved at Williams who were friends, and then I opened it as I opened it on the first day of exam period my senior year as just to do it. I didn't really have it. I was a Marxist more. I wanted to start a commune, you know, or a food co-op. You know, I was not interested. I was not focused on making money, but I realized that, you know, I mean, I didn't have any money, so I borrowed $4,000 from my mother. You know, but I knew to pay people back, I had to be successful. So it was more a fear of failure, that I wouldn't be able to pay people back, and just to make the thing work. And so that was really the drive. The drives were fear of failure and the desire to create, and sort of what was in my head to actually make it happen.
There's two things I want to tease out there, because I've found myself struggling with these two different ideas. Like there's like, you know, trying to achieve material gain. Like I want to do something and then make it successful. I want to earn the benefits of whatever the case may be. And then the actual motivation you need to um, continue to focus on something, and how so disconnected that is from the pursuit of money. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like because you
Yeah, totally, totally.
yeah, because initially you talked about, oh, $3.99, there's more money in this. And then now your thinking's evolving and it's like, well, I'm like a communist. I want a commune. Like I really fell in love with the process. It sounds like the money kind of got you interested, but the process is what got you kind of like, and then debt. This is what got you like locked in, right?
The money never interested me. I mean, it just was, if you're going to do a toll booth, I'll do one for $3.99 versus 25 cents. It's not like, that just seems obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It wasn't like I wanted more money. I just said, look, if you could collect $3.99 versus, let's see, if I got 8 cars through, it'd only be $2, then I'll take the $3.99. But it wasn't like I wanted more money. It was just, that was just like that was like this boom, this little thought that went off in my head that kind of said, ooh, this is interesting way that, this is just a interesting thing. It was like something that clicked.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the other thing is I did not love the process. I hate the process. I started a ton of companies. I hate having to go to government people and get permits. I hate having to, try to get, I don't, but what I love is creating something. I love the thought of, okay, here's something, and like something hits me in my head, like comes from wherever in the universe, and then actually trying to make it happen. That's what I love, the actual of making it happen, but a lot of the process I hate. No, so I mean, yeah, there's something I like, sort of the thinking and then getting it going, but there's a lot of it that I really don't like. I mean, I swore, like I'm starting, I just started, I started this other new business in the city, a little one among the other things I'm working on. And I swore, like, I don't know how many businesses ago, that I would never start another company. And I just can't help myself. I get an idea, or I'm working with some people and they're working on something. It's like, and I know I can help them, and they want some thoughts. So we start working on it. I do like the collaboration with people. I like that. But like the physically going down to the city of San Francisco government and asking some person who I know is going to say no like 17 times and make me jump through a bunch of hoops, that I hate. But the idea of, okay, how do we put this together? That's interesting.
Right.
I don't know if I'm making any sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And the process for me when I think about it, because I know you really enjoy sports also. Like when I'm thinking about the process, I'm thinking about like, there's like a Kobe Bryant getting up early and like working on the craft, like whatever it is to improve yourself at the thing. And so it sounds like the creative pursuit is what drives you. There's like the actual regulatory process, which I wasn't actually even thinking about. I was thinking about just like, the starting of something, you know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of necessary evils that we have to deal with when we're trying to do whatever. And some people really do enjoy that. They really do enjoy making sure all the dollars are accounted for, all the paperwork is in, all like the XYZ, yada, 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 ABC. And then others are really, they really fall in love with solving the problem. Like there's a problem here.
I'm the second one.
Yeah, there's probably more than these two types of people.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. And I had like, I've always had a partner who took the other end.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm the person desk, but I love having a partner who's like the person who's incredibly organized and clean, because it makes me at least be somewhat polite. Just to be polite, I keep it relatively organized. And if they give me instructions like stick the paper here, do this here, I'll follow those instructions. But naturally, it's going to become a mess.
Mm-hmm. Was there a point when you knew that, okay, this is something big, Like, what was the point when it went from like I'm scraping to like um this is kind of out of control?
That summer, we worked 7 days a week, 20 hours a day minimum. You know, we slept in the new locations we were trying to put together, and you know, from 4 to 7 in the morning, sometimes floor, and then we would, you know, get in our car and drive to go back and work and put tires on cars. You know, we work all day, 7, 8 at night, and then we get in our car and grab some fast food and go back and start putting together another, you know, the new shop we were trying to get done. We had to open after we got the first one done. They said, okay, you got to do 5 more by August 1st, and so
Who
that
was
was
they?
on.
Who was they?
This was so it was the company that sold the tires. We just
Okay.
they sold the tires. So that company said, okay, you can do 5 more, but they got to be done by August 1st. And so we ended up with 9 locations within a year and a half. And we started making enough, you know, money that I could, I was like the first year, whatever, I was living in a 1 bedroom apartment with 5 people, and I was married. So my wife put up with a lot of stuff. So we had people in the living room and in the dining room and the, you know, and the couches. But after, you know, 6 months or a year, we were able to get our own place. And so, you know, I don't know if, I don't know that it's quote out of control, but we were doing pretty well.
Was it if
You know,
you're all right? So 9 locations. That sounds like a lot. And is the name Wheelworks, is that established now? Are all these Wheelworks?
yeah, they were all Wheelworks.
Okay. So 9 locations. You know, most people never achieve that in business. And so maybe like at the point where there was 9, did it feel like not enough to you, or did it feel like do you remember the moment when if like how did that feel? Did that feel like you were
Okay.
big or no?
No, I would say that there was about there was one time when I was driving on the road. I remember just at night, and for about 30 seconds, I felt really great.
Hmm.
Um, and like, oh, this is great. Things are really going good. This is really fantastic. Um, and then I just was back into working on whatever the problems were that I needed to fix.
Just to give some context before you walk away from what works. So there's this summer grind. At one point you're at 9 locations. What was the highest location count by the time you left the company?
The reason that I ended so we got to 9 stores. What happened was not that was this is in Washington D.C. or surrounding Washington D.C. I had a covenant not to compete, and the other company we were working with was not doing well, and I knew that this thing was not going to work in the long term. We were very successful, and they were in trouble, and so I started looking, knowing that I couldn't grow. I wasn't allowed to grow anymore on the East Coast. So I knew with a covenant not to compete, I needed to get a long way away. And so I I I went through a number of possibilities. I spent about a year trying to put a tire company together in Dallas, and I did that, but that partners with this other company did not. It was not going to work with them, and so a friend of mine pointed out that San Jose, California was the fastest growing city in America. So my partner and I got in an airplane. We flew out to the Bay Area, and in about 30 seconds, I knew I wanted to live here. And so I started I stayed with some friends out here and started doing demographic studies and trying to figure out what made, see, what I realized was I didn't want to just do the service end of the business because I was tied by the quality of tires that they sold, and that was holding us back. And so I said, you know, with this new one, I want to both sell the product and do the service on the product, both things. And so I went around and studied what I thought were the 5 best retail tire companies in America, and wrote a paper to myself about 50, 75 pages on just the characteristics that made up that those companies shared. And I came up with like 32 points that they had in common. There were like 12 key ones, and I said, okay, if I'm going to do this, I need to follow those, at least as many of those things as I could. And so I did. I then started looking around. I looked at what made their locations work. Why were some really good and some not? And then I started looking for those types of locations in the Bay Area. I looked at what the competition was like, and I noticed that their prices were really high. So that seemed to be an opening that I could come in and, you know, maybe do well. And then the other thing is I figured that I had never sold a tire, even though I put them on cars. I never had done the retail in, so I didn't know how to do inventory or sell the product. And I knew there was DOT, Department of Transportation registration stuff that needed to be done. So I went, got a job. I applied, you know, at the bottom. And even though I was running a company back east, I was working on the West Coast on the lowest job possible in a tire company, learning everything from the bottom up. And so then I learned it, and then I started looking for locations and I was thinking about having a company on the East Coast and one on the West Coast, you know, but the one on the East Coast started, you know, the other company was having more and more problems. So, and it was a lot flying back and forth across the country. So in the end, we got a really good offer on our service company and sold that right before we opened the company, the Wheelworks, on the West Coast. And the Wheelworks on the West Coast was sort of V2, you know, or generation 2, because we didn't just put the tires on the car. We then, you know, we sold the product, and then we added other services like brake service and alignment and stuff like that. So that was a much bigger operation, you know, that required a lot of learning, you know, how to buy tires when I didn't have that much money, and, you know, get credit. You know, again, I learned another secret that allowed me, you know, another sort of light went off, and I figured out how to make the business work.
So when you moved to the Bay Area, what year was this?
1979.
Okay. And you sold Wheelworks in '98, right? You sold the Eastern service portion, but you spent the next.
Yes.
You sold the business in '98.
I sold the East Coast business in late '79, and then I opened the West Coast Wheelworks in February of '80, and then I sold the West Coast Wheelworks December 31st of '98.
Right. Okay.
But I kept running. I still ran it. I ended up taking over the parent company that bought us. I became president and COO of that company. And so Wheelworks, when I sold it, was the 15th largest retail tire company in the U.S. We sold it to the company, it was the 5th largest. So we became the 3rd largest. And in the next 2 years, the CEO or chairman and I built it to the biggest independent retail company in America with 6,500 employees in 25 states. But the Wheelworks that I had on the West Coast when I left had 47 locations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's like, you know, that's crazy. That's like In-N-Out Burger or something. Like In-N-Out Burger probably has more today, but I'm just saying, like after I met you, I had heard of Wheelworks before I met you, and there is a Wheelworks in San Francisco. There's one, right? And it's on Franklin
and Bush,
yeah. And so I went in there because, you know, you helped me, you came with me and helped me buy my latest car, my Audi A4. You know, we would do that, and I've gone to that Wheelworks to get it serviced. And so you know, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, the big craze in today's focus around entrepreneurship is in tech, and there's like this there's this craze also to make money in Bitcoin, you know, or crypto. Those are kind of like, maybe it's just me because I'm from San Francisco and that's all I hear is like, oh, software, crypto, you know, which is also like, you know, a software, like computer, like online product. or something else related to it, right? Like digital mining, it's all digital. And you built a brick and mortar company. It's kind of like I don't think you talk to a lot of business people in business. Is the emphasis on doing that still a thing? Is there like a appetite to build brick and mortar for today's entrepreneur? What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, I think there is an appetite. It's so when I built Wheelworks, I mean, what we did, we brought every technological innovation we could into Wheelworks so that we made it more efficient than the other brick and mortar retail tire companies. So we took advantage of everything we could, but we still. So I think it depends, on the industry. You know, um, so I made reference earlier, but I just opened a hair salon with two people, and you can't do.
Is that where you got the haircut for the?
That's where. That's exactly where I got the haircut. It's called The Lane, and it's on Steiner Street, right between Post and Sutter. Okay, there'll probably be a day where there'll be a technological way to get your hair cut online, but it's not there now. If you can build a really good model for doing things, then you can build a great company. So, with Wheelworks, what we worked on was making the perfect retail tire store, so that men and women and anybody, grandmothers could go in and feel safe and comfortable. And, that's what it was about. It was about making something really, really, really special and really different, because I think people are really intimidated going in and with a lot of types of auto service getting stuff done. At least it was a lot more back in the 80s and the 90s, maybe less so a little bit now, but they were normally dirty and there were auto magazines all over. We made it really clean and put plants in and magazines that were more appealing to the customer instead of the mechanics, made sure the bathrooms were spotless. I think that kind of stuff still exists. And so we're trying to build a really good model with Elaine and, a great place for the employees. It's just a giant collaboration between the customers and the people that work there. And that's really, to me, what's really interesting. The issue is, how do you make a great place for people to get their hair colored and cut, that's clean and safe, and the people do good quality, and they, once you get one done, then why not open another one, and then why not open another one? And if you're sharing with your people the benefits of the growth, and the people want to learn, in other words, the other people who join the organization, not just the three of us who started it, but as other people come in, you build a culture that people like and they want to be a part of it, and then then they want to help lead it in other places. So that's sort of what our thinking was with Wheelworks. It's the same thinking here, but I think I got involved with starting some tech companies, even though I don't know anything about tech. I did a video company, and I did a couple of software companies, and I did an app.
Right. And so I want to like, surface some of that around hiring, negotiations, like business partner fallout. What I'm saying? There's like a lot that like you've seen and gone through. We haven't talked really about failures either, which I know just inevitable, like in business, like that's going to happen. But if you had like, what's your rules on hiring? What are like the Mike Hexner rules on hiring?
Most of the time, you don't want to hire your friends. That is one of the rules.
What about
but
family?
I would say it's typically going to end up in trouble. I'm not a big person on hiring friends and family. It isn't like I haven't done it, but I'll give you a couple things that I did learn. Mm-hmm. I sat with a guy who was on the cover of Fortune magazine once, and he was, I think it was Fortune or Forbes, and the cover was the number one recruiter, the number one hiring guy in America. And he said, listen, do you know how often I'm good? And I thought, well, like 98% of the time. And he went, no, 57% was his hit rate on making correct hires. So, he said and there were a few other guys there with me who were running companies, and he said, you guys would all do best if you just flipped the coin, because at least you'd have a 50-50 chance. And my record on hiring was probably 20% correct, 80% of the time I'm wrong. And it's because I'll see something I like in somebody right away, and then I want to bring them in, and they may not be right, but I just ignore it. And so he said the key to hiring, and this is just, I think this was an incredible lesson, was anybody can interview well, but he said, what people don't do is you get the references from the person. And then when you call the references, you ask them for the names of other people that worked with that person, because the references are often either friends or people that really liked him, and they're going to say good things, or they've been trained by the company not to say anything bad. But if you get the name from them of, well, who did they work with? And you get those names, those people will tell you the truth. They'll tell you what the person's really like to work with. And that's where that's the people who will take that second step in reference checking. Most people don't even call references. So calling references is a good start, but if you do the second in-depth reference, your hit rate will go up significantly over anybody around you. And anyway, so there's another famous, there's one last famous phrase, which is hire slow, fire fast.
Actually, that was gonna be my next thing, is like the rules on firing. So I'm actually about firing, then I'm gonna ask you about negotiations, and then I'm gonna ask you about quitting. So what are the rules on firing?
What I learned was, rule number one is that the person is in the wrong place. If they're doing a mediocre job for you, they were not put on this planet to be doing mediocre work. There's some other place that they're supposed to be. And you're like a drug dealer giving them this money in this lousy job that they're not succeeding, and they feel lousy about because they know they're not doing well, but you're keeping them around, and you're not releasing them and letting them go find the right place for them in their life. And so I learned that it's actually doing the person a service. And so I will tell you that I've fired 1,000 people, and 997 of the people will come up to me now and thank me and tell me, I really appreciate the fact that you helped me move on. So related to that, first thing is that, what I'm doing is I'm helping people do what they can't do for themselves. So here are the rules, though, specifically in the firing process. Number one, when you're going to fire somebody and you say, hey, look, I want to meet you and 10 o'clock or whatever, when that person's walking to your office or walking to your desk or whatever, or they know you're coming to meet with them, they know they're getting fired. Deep inside somewhere, they know they're getting fired. So know that. Number one, they know they're getting fired. Number two, in the first sentence or two, you tell them, look, it's over, or you say you're fired, or it's not working, it's not going to work. You're not going to be working here any longer. Whatever phrase that you feel comfortable with. Don't sit there and have a conversation with them about, how the family is, how was your weekend, because all you're doing is torturing them psychologically. And when you finally say it, it feels even worse. So you just tell them right off the bat, look, it's over. And then what you do is, beforehand, you want to think of good things about that person. And so you tell them, look, here's what you are really great with people. You're fantastic with people. And you ought to, in my mind, you should be looking there. And I'm going to recommend to anybody who wants somebody who's good with people, but let's say there was one thing that just didn't work, which is like they never were there on time. And so your store was, not open when it was supposed to. You then say, but look, wherever you go, you need to fix this on time thing. So you give them the one thing that maybe you think that would help them. And then you give them another compliment again about them. And that person's going to want to talk most of the time. Some of them are just going to go, okay, thank you. They're going to walk out, but most are going to sit there and they're going to want to talk. And so the next rule is, no matter what they say or what happens, you do not rehire them. It might be tempting. They beg, they say, look, I've fixed that one thing, whatever. do not rehire them. You already made the decision. They're in the wrong place. Do not change your mind. If you do, you will regret it. I got talked into it, you know, 10 years ago in a situation. I knew I wasn't supposed to. I did it. It was horrible. Do not rehire them. And then when they walk out, you know, you shake their hand and wish them the best, but you sit there and you give them some time, because the picture I was given was, it's like in the cartoons where somebody goes over the cliff, like Wile E. Coyote or whatever, and he falls 10,000 feet, and you see the outside and the inside of his body. It's like the skeleton falls to his feet. That's what's going on for the person who's been fired. They are sitting there inside their head while they're trying to talk you into something or whatever. They're trying to think, what am I going to do? How am I going to deal with this? Where, you know, what's my next thing? And you give them the space, a quiet space where they can, for 20 or 25 minutes is typically the thing. You just sit there and it's just a grace that you give, or time or space. It's a gift. And you just give them that space to recover so they can get up and walk out, and then let them walk out when they're ready to walk out. And that's it.
So I think I'm pretty sure I talked to you before I fired somebody before, or let somebody go and try to move on.
Yeah.
But it's like, and so I remember a lot of these rules. I remember like some of these conversations that we talked about. One of the things we also talked about a lot is negotiations. And
Yeah.
so I read some books on negotiations that are pretty good. I'm sure you've read several. What are like your top 2-3 things to keep in mind when it comes to negotiations?
So one of the things is, I do not want the other person to feel like they lost. I think the best negotiations, both parties feel like they won. And so, you know, a couple things. Number one, I try to like the other person on the other side of the table. So going in, I try to, ahead of time, I want to visualize liking them. And then I want to find out what it is that they need to feel like they've won. So I ask questions about what is it that they need, and then I do everything I can to give them what they want. So let's say you wanted to buy something and they wanted $1 million for it, you know. So I think what you do is you got to give them $1 million. Now, you may have to give them $10 a year for the next 1,000 or 100,000 years, but you know, you give them that number that they need. And so, so that's 2. Yeah, so I think it's about understanding the other person, liking the other person, and giving them what they want. I guess one other thing that I learned was, sometimes people want to go back and forth. It's like, okay, you give me this, I'll give you that. You give me this, I'll give you that. Sometimes it's interesting, but people, in the way their humans' minds work, the going back and forth, sometimes you can give a person $0.25 and they'll give you $1 in value. But it sounds like it's an exchange going back and forth.
Well, there's this one thing you mentioned about going first.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, if somebody is saying, okay, what's the amount, you want the other person to make the statement first. It's typically, if you throw something out, they're gonna do, you know, if they want it more, they're gonna say more. If they want to do it less, they're gonna do less. So I want to get a sense of where the number is and try to get them to be the first one to throw the number out on the table.
When is the time to quit?
In a negotiation?
No, it's like rules on quitting apart. Negotiations done. You're in a job. You started a business. You started some new project or task, and you're thinking about quitting. Well,
I don't know if I'm that good at the quitting end. I mean, I go till I think that there's no chance. You know, that's me. I'm probably too loyal, but I go till I'm sure it's not good. I don't think I'm the best person to go to for advice, because I'm still always trying to solve the problem and figure out how to make something work. So nothing, you know, I mean, I can think of a number of instances where I probably should have. I will say the only one thing I heard was, I mean, you never quit too soon, is a phrase. Um, every time, by the time you quit, you almost always will look back and go, I should have quit. I should have known a year ago. Should have, whatever. I should have known 6 months. I should have known 5 years ago. So, I don't, but I don't think I'm the person to come to regarding quitting, because I can name a number of instances where I should have quit and I didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. There was like, when I was on the school board and thinking about, running for supervisor, there was like, the experience for me at the time was like, at least internally, there's something I know inside where the metaphor I have is that when I want to do something, I can tell the difference between when the wind is in my face and the wind is at my back,
Yeah.
And the first time I ran for the school board, the wind was in my face, but I was going to do it anyway. The second time I ran for the school board, the wind was at my back, and I didn't have to work as hard, but I won. I lost the first time, I won the second time. And when it came time to run for re-election, I wasn't in the place. I already felt kind of checked out because of, I think, like a number of reasons, like trying to think about like my financial situation, trying to think about like the types of problems I wanted to solve, trying to like, feel like I can go deeper, or like, and then there's like the own internal ambition about like whatever the thing is. And there was a lot of wind in my back if I wanted to run for re-election, right? It was like, the possibility of winning that was probable, very probable. But running for the other position I wanted to run for, a supervisor, the wind was definitely in my face, And so, and I ended up quitting that race, which was, I think, really excruciating right before the time that I did it. And then once it was like out, then it was just kind of like, I think there's a lot of lessons to learn. I don't know, people like, because it feels like an internal gauge to me also, like you said, like you feel like you stick around too long. Like there's like this sense in me where it's just kind of like, I'm done, and I can't keep going if I know I'm done,
Well, I think you said something really, really critical, important, which is that you were checked out. I mean, I think once you're checked out, or like, I spent a year putting this really great company together in Dallas, which ended up succeeding, doing really well, but I walked away. And it was in that situation, I found that the other guy was lying to me. And, if a person I'm supposed to work with is lying or cheating, I quit. I'll quit there, but I can't go on. So I can't go on because like you were checked out. To me, that's a really good sign to follow. There was a time with Wheelworks where I was thinking about quitting. This was in 1982, and I went to my partner and I said, I'm done. I don't think I want to work here any longer. And he asked me what was going on, and we spent a couple days where we just sort of stepped to the side and talked a lot. And there was a person at the front desk when I walked into the office who I couldn't stand. She was mean and nasty, and I was putting up with her. And there were some jobs I was doing that they were kind of like sexy looking jobs, but I wasn't that interested. There were some other areas that I wanted to work in that I thought I'd be good at, because I'm kind of good with numbers. I liked working with the programmers and the purchasing people, but I felt I shouldn't go there because I'd hurt their feelings. And he just said, look, you got to stop worrying about hurting people's feelings. We need to get rid of that person who is making it that you don't even want to walk through the door. And you got to go work in the areas where you want to work and work with those people, and let go of some of the areas that you don't really want to do. And so he helped me, even though, so he helped me work through not quitting, because I made the environment more of what I wanted it to be. And so we changed some things outside, and I changed some things inside. We made some decisions about how codependent we were going to be, and that we basically we were going to hire people that we thought were good people, and we were going to get rid of the people that we thought were not nice people. So we had a nice environment that felt good. So, but that was one where I was going to quit, and I was able to change it by changing the circumstances. I don't know, when you're running for a position, or you're in a position and you just don't have the heart for it anymore, if there's nothing you can do about it, then it's probably a sign to leave, I think is what I heard from you.
Yeah, yeah. A person's internal gauge is like, it just made me different. Like, there was a time, like, when I had to leave from Williams, right? And I was like, I'm never going back. And my grandma said, you can't run every time something gets hard. And so every time I think about quitting, I think about her telling me that you can't run every time something gets hard, because there's a difference between like moving to Nicaragua, right? Being here now, I've come to this juncture where, like, okay, am I going to stick this out and figure out what it means to live here, or am I going to return back home? And it feels like coming home will be quitting here. And like, am I leaving because it's hard? Like, I can't run every time, this is like a really good, we can talk about this for a while, but I want to talk to you a little bit about the country. That I have a list of final questions to go over with you before we close out. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Okay. So, we're recording this in late July. We just passed the 4th of July. And I sent you this text that was like, I love America. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about and post, kind of like coming out of pandemic 2021, America. What is like, where do you think things are at nationally in terms of the economy and politically?
I think the economy is in pretty good shape. I think the economy is going to be strong for the next few years. Unless something else wild happens. But politically, I think the country's in a mess. And the inability of people to communicate or listen, the lies that are perpetrated, the influence of money on elections and power, I think is not, I feel like it's a big problem, and I'd like to try to help solve it. It isn't like I don't think it's been horrible before. During the Vietnam War in the late 60s, it was feeling like there might be a revolution in this country. In the late 1800s or the mid 1800s, obviously, we ended up in a civil war. There have been some really, really bad times. And I think that having a contentious atmosphere may be part of a democracy, but I think that, we were able to work out of, what they called yellow journalism in the late 1800s, where, newspapers just lied about stuff. And I think there was an integrity, at least a decent amount of integrity in this early and late 60s and 70s with respect to what you could get in terms of information. There were people would put facts on the table and different pieces of information, and people who tried to change facts, they were able to be proven wrong. Now people are questioning what is a fact, and is there anything that's a fact? And it's very scary for me. I'm very concerned, for this country. I believe in the values of America, but I am very concerned.
Yeah, I'm concerned too, and there's so much like there's so much about American culture, like Black American culture, that's like uniquely American, you know, and having like traveled other places and been in other Black communities around the world, there's like Black America is uniquely like the Black experience in America, and like I love it, you know, like the movies, the films, the music, and then there's also this, because of the country, this like openness, or maybe even through because of some of the oppression or suppression, like the ability to create, to express yourself freely, which I think like you know, which like I have such a newfound appreciation for, you know, and
Yeah.
so there's so much beautiful stuff that has been culturally created from our country, and when it comes to the ability to do that, there's, I mean, of the modern world, there's really no other place, I think, in the world that's doing it as well as America does it, even with like software and like different business enterprises, you know, and there are things that we don't do well, and as you travel the world too, you see like the rising influence of China in multiple places, and you know, there's like this world debate. I wanted to get your perspective on that. Like, is the rise of China, I don't know how much you think about that, if that's a concern to you. Is that something that Americans should care about, or is that just kind of like whatever? Like, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, China is, you know, what's happened in that country economically is you know, never happened before in history. That a country that was so poor has become, you know, the second biggest economic power in the world, and moving toward becoming the strongest economic power in the world. Um, I think that there are fundamentally two different value systems. I think in the East, there's what's called positive freedom, which is that you find your freedom within a structure. Um, and I think in the West, particularly the United States, we have more what's called a negative freedom I'm talking classic philosophical, I'm using classic philosophical language, but the negative freedom is a freedom from stuff. So it's a freedom from oppression. It's a freedom from the boss. It's a freedom from, you know, whatever the rules are. You know, I'm free to do whatever I want. I'm free to speak. In the East, and specifically in China, there is a freedom that the people have, but it's within an agreement to follow a system. And if you break that system, if you're an individual that breaks the system wins. And everybody's agreed that the system gets to win. So if Americans, so you see what happened with the coronavirus, you know, they, because of their system, were able to step on it, force cities to close, curfews that were extreme, you know, from our perspective, but they got it under control very quickly. Whereas in this country, people were arguing about whether or not to wear masks. People still, you know, don't want to get vaccines, you know, and you know, China is like, I mean, I don't know what the rule is on vaccines, but my guess is that if the system said everybody's getting vaccinated, everybody's getting vaccinated. Right. And so they have a piece within their system. You know, you get a certain piece, but you then lose freedoms to speak. You know, if they say you can't look at Google, then you're not looking at Google. You know, that's the way it is.
Yeah. I have some final questions I want to share with you before we wrap up. Thank you for taking the time this morning. It's good to talk to you. You ready?
Great talk. It's always great talking with you.
Yeah, these are going to be.
Did I answer your question, or did I give you enough on the China?
Yeah, I think that's a framing. That framing, yeah, you did. That framing makes sense to me, and there's so many ways we can take that discussion about, like, you know, uh, China versus the US, like the individual versus the state. And because it is, I mean, I see it as like, I think it's only a matter of time before it becomes the most powerful country. I don't know what that means for our country. And so I just kind of wanted to get your take on that.
Well, I'm on a Facebook site. A guy friended me a long time ago. I sold him one of my companies, and I like him personally, but just about every, I mean, not to get into too much politics, but there's like, let's say 100 people and 97 to 99 of the people are huge Trump supporters. And I'm not, and so what I tried to do was to have a conversation with them about what we agree on. So if we all agree that we want the freedom to make certain decisions, that's good. But we, but it seemed that there were areas where, when I would express things, they didn't want me to express stuff, and I was threatened, with, death, harm, etc., by a few people on the site, and at different times. And that's what concerns me, is that if we're going to have a country where we believe that we can all have disagreements, we should be able to go to an arena and where we can argue and discuss and lay facts out and learn and change and maybe come up with a synthesis of ideas, or agree that maybe the other person was right on this specific situation, or they agree that what I'm saying is. But so if we don't realize that we are all in this together under the idea of America, where we have opportunities by to grow a business the way we want, and but we're going to follow certain rules within our system, I think we're going to tear ourselves apart, and I think we are tearing ourselves apart. So that's my big concern, is I think China's going to win if we can't understand we're all on the same team. Some of us are maybe defensive backs, some of us are defensive linemen, going back to the sports thing, and so we're going to play the game slightly differently, but we're both trying to beat the other side. We're trying to win, or at least be competitive, and China's really clear what they're trying to do, and we're not. We're a mess.
Well, are you pushed more by duty or inspiration?
Oh, interesting. I'm pushed by both. Well, I have a duty as a father, maybe, and nothing is going to take me away from that duty. So if I do think I have a duty, I don't know how many duties I have, but if I do have a duty, I don't know if I'm pushed by it, but I'm not going to get off the duty. But a duty isn't going to get me to go, if I'm inspired to make a really great cake, I'm going to do all kinds of special things to try to figure out how to make the most incredible cake. And a duty to do the cake, I would make the cake if I had to, because I had to, but it wouldn't be the same special. So it depends on what it is, and and how good you're going to get. So does that make sense?
Do you have a favorite book, poem, or song?
No, I have a lot of books that I like. I write poetry. I used to send my mother a poem every month, and it was excruciating writing them. But I like some of them, and I like a number of poets. It depends on what my mood is. I could like Carl Sandburg, Edgar Allan Poe. I like a lot of. I get this daily poem, from, I think it's poets.org. I get a poem every day, so I read poetry almost every day. Music, I love all. I mean, when I was at Williams, there were like two groups. There were the people who loved the Allman Brothers and people who liked the Grateful Dead. It was like you couldn't be in both groups, and you couldn't like both, and I like both. So I love, my son plays as a zoo. You ever heard of Zoo? ZHU?
No.
So Zoo sort of does a lot of synthetic stuff. Just a great artist, But again, I like the Beatles. I'm not a big Frank Sinatra. That's kind of older for me. But there's so much good music. you know, I love. So I don't really have a favorite in any of those.
All right, finish these sentences. Mornings are better with.
Mornings are better with a smile.
Okay. You're staring at the sunset on a beach. You're going to order a.
Yeah, I'm on the beach and I'm going to order something.
Yeah. You're going to order a fill in the blank.
Sparkly citrus drink.
That sounds like what I'd order too. Blank is the best season of the year.
I'm going to say late spring.
Okay. I die for.
I die for. I die for those I love.
I'd kill for.
Same.
The worst day of my life was.
It was the day that my son was very sick.
Before I die, I want to.
Before I pass, I want to run a marathon. I want to shoot a golf score for 18 holes below my age.
When I die, I want people to say,
I miss him.
Do you have a motto?
A motto? No.
That was it. This concludes my discussion with Mike Hexner, entrepreneur, family man, one of my mentors, advisors, a good friend. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate the time.